Well, hello, and welcome to Opal City Confidential, a Starman podcast, episode 8. How you doing, Will Payton? We are up to the coverage of Starman Volume 1, Issue 1 and 2, the introduction of Will Payton, Starman. As I've said over and over again, I've been looking forward to this because I've never read this series, and I bought the entire run right before the pandemic, pandemic blurry brain. And I've never read these. I've only read the Eclipso stuff because it tied into other comics I was reading, specifically Valor, which is another story which will get talked to years down the road on my Legion Adventure podcast. But I've read them. I've read them a couple times, and we're going to talk about them, those first two issues, 1 and 2. And there's a wonderful article in back issue number 133 about the creation of this. There was a nice little in the back of issue 1, because I'm reading the physical issues, about a little history of Roger Stern coming and doing it, and I may read you a little bit of that. Let's get started with some of the basic information from the Grand Comic Database. Issue 1 of Starman Volume 1, Issue 1, which is cover dated December 1988. I was 24 years old. Ooh, this book is old. It was put on first on sale June 30th, 1988. Cover pencils and inks, Tom Lyle. Letters, Steve Vance, which has a question mark, nothing on colors. The main character is Starman, Will Payton. Logo design credit is Todd Klein via his Facebook page, used with permission. That's cool. I like Todd Klein. He does some good logo work. This was written by Roger Stern. Woo-hoo. Big Roger Stern fan. Love his Avengers. Love a lot of what he's done. His Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, is my Captain Marvel. I'm a big fan of him. And his run on Avengers with with John Buscema and Tom Palmer is a masterpiece. So it's a Roger Stern, woohoo. Script, pencils, Tom Lyle, woohoo. Inks, Bob Smith. Colors, Juliana Ferriter. Letterers, John Pinaha. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And then there is a little article in this, Starlight, Starbright, Fourth Star I See Tonight, written by Robert Greenberger with some pencils and inks by Tom Lyle. And there is no synopsis in this, on either of these. So I'm just going to have to wing it, because I'm just going to have to wing it. So let me pull out this comic and we'll get started. So this comic starts with some scientists in a research place working on the Celatron 5. It hangs in space. It is transmitting power back to a research facility. Let me read you this opening. I posted these some panels from this morning on the Twitter. High above the United States, the Celatron 5 hangs in geosynchronous orbit, drinking in radiation from deep space and converting that energy into a single, highly focused beam, aimed at a special receptor atop of this unassuming building in western Utah. But the men who control this operation are not chiefly interested in learning more about the universe. Theirs is not a question for knowledge. Theirs is a quest for power. And you see the scientists, they've got some people in glass tubes, and they're going to take the power from this ray and create super soldiers, because Dr. Melrose, the lead scientist, thinks that Superman, this dude is a nativist, racist jackass. I said it, I'm saying it now, and I'm saying it early. His problem is he wants to breed good old American heroes for this reason. Here's what he says. More than that, Max, I almost just by default gave him a Nazi accent. He's not. He's an American. So, more than that, Max, we're giving the nation new heroes. Not alien supermen or masquerading as heroes. Not costume weirdos like that new Justice League. But real, red-blooded American heroes with the power to set things right. Justice League International. Ha! They showed their true colors when they let that Russian into their group. Well, this institute's going to change all that when we're through. At that point, his assistant goes, Dr. Melrose, something's wrong. We're losing Stellatron 5. It's been hit. And Melrose gets a little whiny because of stuff. And then we cut to Colorado Rockies, and this couple has found a man in some jeans, some boots, a denim vest. It is the 80s, folks. And he's got a beard, and he's laying on this this burnt thing of grass. And the hikers call the police, and the police take this guy. He's got a beard, and he's got this weird red skin. I guess meant to be red. It just looks like really dotted Matrix comic coloring of the era. And this man wakes up. He freaks out that he's in the morgue. He discovers he has super strength. The pathologist passes out. The cop comes in, draws his gun, and the bearded man jumps. He's floating. He goes through the glass. He falls, and then he realizes he can fly. So he flies off, lands on the top of an 18-wheeler, digging in with his fingers. He rides to a restaurant, takes his sweaty sock money out of his pocket, and gets called on it by the waitress, and realizes he's been asleep for over a month. He's been asleep since May 19th. It is now June 29th. As he's walking through the street, he stops. He walks upon some people robbing a bank. They shoot him. It hurt. He gets shot in the arm. It doesn't do anything, but it stings. He creates this like black light image of himself and crashes the car, melts the guns. The cops come up, take the bad guys, and he flies off. And some kid goes, "Looky, Mom, is that the Green Lantern?" And then one of the cops goes, "Ralph, I think I've talked to an angel and I've never got his name." Someone has a crush on Will. We don't know it's Will yet, but. And then we cut to somewhere near Phoenix, Arizona. There's a young woman playing the guitar. Her dog is either singing along or telling her she sucks because he's going woo, woo, woo. The man who has just recently gotten superpowers comes up and says everyone's a critic, right? Okay, so Muggs the dog did not like Jane's, Jayne, singing, and this was because, we'll find out later, I don't know, but Muggs is her dog, Jane is her name, and she is Will Payton's sister, and this is the first time we hear his name. He shows off some of his powers. She thinks it's Neato Peachy Keen because she wants him to become a superhero. So they go home. She takes him home to their mom's house. He figures a way to turn off his pink skin just by thinking it's off. He shaves, his hair color changes. His mom gives him a bunch of grief for not calling and not being around, but she loves him. But he's going to get a job and not be a mooch. They're thinking about it. Jane draws a costume for him. He's like, I don't know if I want to be a superhero. He crushes his mom's phone because he can't get a job. His sister makes his first costume, which is this purple, white, and yellow costume. I will say I'm reserving judgment on the costume. I'm going to go into this. I've said things about it in the past to people and blah, blah, blah. Having a snotty opinion about something. But I'm going to give it a chance because I'm reading this with fresh eyes. Well, she's made him a costume, and then there's a construction crane is falling. There's a man trapped, and there's an EMT trying to save him. Will and Jane are watching. Will gives the costume a second chance. The people are realizing that if they can't stabilize it, the man's going to die, or they may have to amputate his legs right there in the site. And Jane realizes Will is gone, and then Will flies into the scene, and the police go, "What can you do?" And he takes an iron bar and he mushes it with his hands, and then he tells the paramedic, "I'm going to take this nice and easy, all set," and he's going to lift. So he puts his back into it and he's lifting. And, it's really hard. The paramedic's staying there. Will is straining. He doesn't know his powers yet. So he's pushing. His feet are digging in. He thinks it's hurt. It's like he's just being a hero. He's just being a hero. And the EMT goes, "Go to it, mister. Give it hell." And he's like, "Just lift this sucker." And the guy yells, "Lift it. Madre Dios, it's working," says the paramedic. Eventually, the entire crane is off the ground. The paramedic slides the accident victim onto a stretcher very quickly and drags him out of the way, and the crane collapses on top of Will. And then Will melts his way through and flies away without a word. And she's like Starman, and they've named him Starman. And he flies in, and she realized that his voice is deeper, his face is looking. She shows how he changes from his Starman appearance, which is a lighter color brown hair, different skin tone, and no solid white eyes. And she congratulates him. Fantastic. You're going to make a great superhero, just like Geoforce or Booster Gold. No way. What? Most of these super guys seem crazy, and a few of them are out-and-out jerks. Booster Gold seems to have played hero mainly so he could make commercial endorsements. Some hero. Oh, there you are. A few heroes who are worth their salt, like Superman and Wonder Woman. But most of them... Where did you get... These are my magazines. Where have you been reading them, mister? I don't want to be a superhero. I haven't slept much in the past week, sis. I've stayed up late wondering about these crazy powers, how I've gotten them, and if they'd last. I studied those articles to see if I could get some ideas to what I should do with myself. Mostly found out what not to do. So many of these guys operate out in the open, making targets of themselves and everyone around them. That's not for me. And then she chimes in. But there's so much good they can accomplish with their powers. There's so much you can accomplish. Will, you saved a man's life today. I know. I came close to screwing up too. What I took on was more than any powers could handle, and somehow I pulled through and saved a life. That felt good. Maybe I will wear the costume again. But if I do, it's on my turn. One thing's certain, I still have a lot to learn about being Starman. You want to help me? You bet I do. And then we cut back to the lab, and Dr. Melrose is ticked because he realizes that Will has the powers he meant for his new heroes. So what do I take on this? My take on this first issue. One, it's a great first issue. A lot going on. We're introduced to Will, his mom, his sister, the bad guys. I don't know how long these guys are going to stay the bad guys. I assume we meet some more characters in the next issue. I don't know the supporting cast, but I really liked it. I like Tom Lyle's art. I'm not as familiar with his art. I know he's done stuff I've read. I think some Robin and some other things, and I like it. It's a comic of the late 80s, and I don't mean that in a bad, pejorative way or anything like that. I just mean that's the style. Roger Stern is one of the greats of the 80s and the early 90s, justly so, and he knows how to write a fun comic book. He's not talking down to you. He doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. But it's great. It's very different than what we get with Starman of the 90s with Jack and his stuff. But it's still a really good comic. I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. So let's go on to issue 2. Starman Field Testing by Stern, Lyle, and Smith. This was cover dated November 1988. So I've got this pulled up on the Grand Comic Database. This went on sale July 28th, 1988. 36 pages. It was sold for a whopping $1. God, they were so expensive. This issue has a variant, it says, but that's just a newsstand variant, which instead of having DC aren't just for kids in the ISDN box. It would have the barcode. Cover was by Tom Lyle and Bob Smith. Interior was 22-page stories. Roger Stern, Tom Lyle, Bob Smith, Julian Federer, and Bob Panetta, just like before. Main character Will Payton. Synopsis: Will Payton tests his power with a little help with his sister Jane. And there's a text article in this, but I'll look at that when we get to it. So that was a synopsis, but it starts with, it's some more of this great. Lyle and Smith's art's really good. I'm enjoying it. It's fun. It's not, it's not super flashy, but it works. It starts with Will's flying over the site where he was zapped, and there are these scientists there experimenting. The guys that work for Dr. Melrose, the cops are telling him what's going on. They explain it. He's floating above, a little mental flashback in his head, and we get to see it. And he's floating, and he's thinking he's floating above the ground. I think she was kidding, but now I don't know. Maybe she was on target, that the charge area is right where I stretched out. What happened after I dozed off? Because he was laying there just looking at the stars one night and woke up a month later. What happened after I dozed off? That's the million-dollar question. I suppose I could buzz down and see if the investigators have dug up any answers. But what would they say? Excuse me, fella, have you found anything around here? Cause a guy to lose a month of his life and give him funky powers? No, not a great idea. I don't want people knowing too much about Starman's background. It's trouble enough having having Jane in on the secret. Jane, ooh, I was supposed to meet her at 9. I better hustle off. And Melrose is in, or one of Melrose's men catches him a picture of him. She flies off to Arizona where they live. Her and Muggs are hanging out. Starman flies by. He knocks her off the truck because he does a little exercise. He shows off his that he can melt stuff, that he can be really shiny and hot, that he can lift a boulder and not feel it. He changes back to the way he normally looks and into his own clothes. We cut to Melrose's base in Utah. I like one thing. I'm going to stop here right there. That he is a Western hero, and he's not in a single city. He's covering Arizona and Utah and Colorado. He is the superhero of the West Coast, and I like that. We go back to Melrose as some of his people have powers. A young lady named Olivia. Miss Hardy, Mr. Hale is his protege, I'm assuming. And he is, they're talking about the powers they have all picked up. Starman starts to think of what he could do. He could build buildings to make money because he can't get a job as Will Payton. He could become a super athlete using his powers. But he notices in the paper, well, he goes to Dear Abby to get some advice, but he looks in the paper and sees there's a serial killer of 12 still being sought by the police. So he flies off to Phoenix Police Headquarters as Starman, and he offers his services to Captain Estevez. And they have a little thing. He shows off some of his powers. He flies off down the highway, and he's looking for things in traffic. He sees some smoke in the distance. So he flies off to see what's going on. And there's a highway patrol that is wrecked and burning. And two officers, a young lady and an African American. He goes down there and he offers to help. He's changed his skin tone to show himself as black, so I think that's a little problematic, but he's just trying to say that he can look like anybody. And the cop thinks he is a fellow African American. The killer threw a grenade in their car, but they've survived. He's driving off in some kind of Jeep with a young lady he's got tied up. He's going to do something to her really bad, I guess. And then Starman shows bad luck for you, and he lifts up the truck and shakes the guy out. The guy fires the machine gun at him. It bounces off. Will goes, he stops. He saves the lady. He shot you. He's getting away. No, he won't get away from me. And he flies and stops the guy. And he starts to make himself hotter and hotter, and it melts the gun, and he carries the guy off, and he's a big hero. Some of the other cops are complaining. One guy in particular says, hey, he's a real showboater. He spent hundreds of man-hours trying to run that killer to ground, and then Lone Ranger flies in for the wrap-up, makes a flashy capture, and gets his picture plastered across every paper from San Diego to the Gulf. And the other cops are grateful, and Estevez comes out and says, I think the man handled a major threat to the public safety, and for that we owe him our thanks. On the other hand, he has no official standing with this department. There's no evidence so far that he's breaking any laws, and I hope it stays that way, because I'd surely hate to have to hunt him down. Back to the Payton thing. Jane and him are talking about it. His mom comes home, and the mom goes, how about give me the sports page while you check out the help wanted listing? You're still actively looking for a job, aren't you? When then we cut back to Utah, and Melrose is ticked. It makes him sick. I wonder if Alan, and he's thinking to himself, I wonder if Alan lined up his freelancer yet. He said Alan is one of his goons, and the freelancer is going to go after Will. And then we cut away to New Mexico near the Continental Divide, and Alan Madison, Melrose's flunky, goes in, and he's talking to the hired gun he has, and it is the villain The Bolt. And we will find out more in issue 3. I want to say this, what's great, and it's reprinted in the back issue, is some introduction to the creators in the letter page. And there's Roger Stern, personal data, full name Roger Lowell Stern, occupation freelance writer, marital status married, known relatives Camilla Merlot, his wife, Roger Neil Stern, father, Betty Stern, mother, Sandra Henry, sister. Well, he gives his whole family. I'm not going to read that. Group affiliations: the Costo Society, National Geographic Society, Southern Poverty Law Center. Good for you, Roger. Good for you. People for the American Way Comic Book Club of Ithaca, base of operations, Ithaca, New York. First appearance, Noblesville, Indiana, September 1st, 1950. First DC appearance as Sergeant Sterno, Karate Kid 2, as Franklin W. Maynard, Amazing World of DC Specials, and Action Comic 600. He's a short little guy, 5'8". I'm 6'3", so I think everybody's short. And he's from that group. Roger Stern, Bob Layton. Stern's a very good friend of Burns. Tom Lyle, born 1953. He was raised in Jacksonville, Florida. It wasn't until he saw Steve Ditko's art on Amazing Spider-Man that Tom got hooked on comics. Some of his favorites are Creeper, Hawk and Dove, DC. Tom also fits in a Tiger story for Solo Avengers and some other minor work before he got to pencil Starman every month. My biggest influence are Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, Barry Windsor Smith, and Milton Caniff. You won't readily see those influences, but they're all in there. That's very nice. Bob Smith's the inker, a little bit on everybody else. Coming attractions next month. Early mail comments from advanced copies that were sent out in the mail, not to mention a 22-page comic story. What's the story about, you wonder? Well, Bolt has been called in to deal with Starman, and deal he does. High above the Arizona desert, Will Payton really finds out his powers as he goes toe-to-toe with his bona fide supervillain. Bolt's been hired by Dr. Melrose and will learn a little more about his plans, too. Join the crew because you'll be sure you won't be disappointed. Until then, cheer on the Mets and enjoy the end of summer. Keep smiling, Bob Greenberger. Bob's a Mets fan. I won't hold it against him. Hey, I'm an A's fan, folks. I understand pain. So, well, that's the first two issues. And let me go over. I like the second issue. I think it's a solid, fun comic. Stuff's everything is building on the next one. I like that the first adventure is just a simple catching a bad guy that the police haven't been able to. He's making friends with the cops. This is a different era. Comics haven't gotten as dark and gritty yet, which is fine. I like dark and gritty, but I also like warm and wholesome. And this is just straight up fun DC stuff. I'm really going to enjoy it. We're early on. I want to see how he deals with the Bolt. I like the Bolt as a villain. I want to see what happens. I know some of the stuff that happens. He becomes friends with Rampage, I think, and some other characters that I really, really like. Again, Roger Stern writes an incredibly solid comic book, so I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to know what you think about him, so we can. So when I post this, I'm going to ask you to send me comments, or you can email them to me what you thought of him, and I will read them when we get back around to him in a couple months. So, because next up is Starman Volume 2, Number 4, and Adventure Comics 65. And then after that, I've already recorded it. Pete from Earth 2 Podcast. We recorded an episode about a Batman comic where Batman, Kathy Kane, Batwoman, the original one, the 50s, and Robin battle a villain called Star-Man. It doesn't say, it's not hyphen. Star-Man is how he spells the name. It's one of those great street library comic finds I had, and we had a good time talking about it. And after that, me and Dave from Earth 2 on episode 11 will cover issues 5 and 6 of Starman Volume 2. And we'll cover the first Talking to David and the First Times Past. And then we'll circle back around to Prince Gavin, because I'm really not going to do any more Michael, because coming up the next arc is all about Michael joining. So we're going to hold on until then. So folks, as always, it's a pleasure just talking comics and talking at you. I'm going to be lining up some guests for some extra podcasts. I talked to Kirby about a couple things we want to discuss. I had to delay Legion and Star Trek recording this Thursday with Jimbo because I've got a broken tooth, and that's got to get fixed. My wife is switching her internet, so I'm hoping I don't lose internet. So I'm recording this on Monday and going to finish it up and post it. So it posts early tomorrow. So if I have to don't record anything the rest of the week, I'm okay. And I've at least gotten Starman up. But there are other things I will say, and I said this on this weekend's episode where I talked about some of the things I was reading. I'm going to deep dive into some more Sweet Tooth because Sweet Tooth Season 2 is coming up, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I will probably do a little review of it as a special episode once I'm done. But it's a big, thick book. 40 issues in one volume. So, folks, okay, Thursday, Legion of Superheroes, My Legion Adventure, another great 2-part story. I think y'all are going to dig this one. And after that, this weekend, I don't know what I'm recording, but I do know I'm going to GalaxyCon on Saturday. So I think maybe I will just talk about GalaxyCon this weekend on Sunday. But I've got some Doctor Who to edit and record on Sunday also. So until then, and until our next episode, you be safe, you be smart, you be kind, and read some comics. Especially some Starman from 1988.